Okay, I'm going to explain Hewlitt. That was due, which was Appendix 4.1 out of the text. It was due Friday at 5 p.m. And I'm going to go over here and open up my vital source, and we'll take a look at it in the textbook. And as I mentioned, involves using, this is a company that is trying to figure out its minimum cash needs to pay its bondholders. So I'll log myself in here. Yeah, there we go. And let's go down here and find, here we are. Here's the textbook. And we had the Appendix 4.1, here it is, Hewlitt Corporation, and doing some financial planning. And just quickly, here's the Excel solution. Okay, as they show you that, those are the capital requirements. Now, the solution file is also the same file that's over in the files section in the Canvas. So I'm going to go back over here. And I'm going to go into the files. And there are the Anderson Text Student Excel files. I'm going to open that up. I'm going to download it. And hopefully it will show up in the folder. Oh, playing naughty again. There it is. It has to do it 2 times. And there's the Anderson text. You can see I've used the files numerous times. In fact, I've got them on a desktop. But I just wanted to show you, what to get and download. Okay, fair enough. Now, I'm going to open up. I have the Anderson text files downloaded on my machine already, as you can see. And this is chapter 4. And we'll go to the Excel files. And we'll find Hewlitt, and I'm going to copy it, and then I'm going to paste it out here. Okay, and I'm going to call this Hewlitt. Oh, I'll rename it. Call it Hewlitt Harmon or something like this. Yeah, Hewlitt Harmon Keith. Now, I'll enable the editing. And I'll do the save as routine. This PC on my desktop. There it is. And I'll save it. And now I'm good to go. Okay, now, when you compare this file, as I said in class, the files that are in the Anderson text student files, those are solution files. And so what I'm having you do is go beyond the solution, okay? And I'm having you do I'm having you manipulate some of the data, okay? And let's go back up here to Canvas, and we'll close this off, and we'll go back to the modules. And this is the module 3, and we'll open it up. And I ask you to do this, to use the solver to compute the minimum cash flows and minimum funds if the price of all 3 bonds increase to 2.5% or the price of all 3 bonds decrease 2.5%. So it just simply was a matter of adding 2.5% to each of the bonds or decreasing the price of the bonds, and in each case running the solver. So you should run it twice. I'm going to go ahead and copy this, and then I'm going to go back to the Hewlitt file I've created for myself, and I'm going to click Insert. I'm going to insert a text box, and I'm going to put the instructions in there so that I have them. And I'll size them up a little bit so they're a lot easier to read. Okay, so there we are. Now what we have to do then is we have the original solution, and that's the one that's also shown in the textbook. Now we'll go back over here for a minute, and they show you the solution. And I'm going to size this up and try to downsize it just a hair so I can slip it in. We can see, but there's the 1728, 794, 1728. So this is the original solution, okay? So what I did here is I went ahead, and I'm going to diminish the rest of this all down, and I'll size this up. I'm going to change this to the original solution. Okay, and I have that. Now, just for convenience sake, I'm going to do this. I'm going to copy this tab, and you'll see original solution number 2. And I'm going to rename this bond prices increase. Okay. And then we'll click this tab. Then we'll go back over here, and I'm going to basically put in a 2.5% increment for each one of these. So the easiest way for me to do it is really simple. I'll click in here, and this will equal 1.15, which is the original value, times 1.025. Okay, and then the second bond, that's going to equal, this is just simply looking at these. What does it look like if I change these parameters or these assumptions about the price? I assume in this case the price of the bonds will rise by 2.5%. Okay, now I'm ready to run the solver. So this is the bond prices increase, and I'm going to come over here and I'm going to click on data. I'm going to click solver. I'm going to look at the solver now. I have the objective function there is in B20. That's the minimum funds required. Okay, and then I have the changing variables, and those changing variables are G21 to 28 and I21 to 28. And those constraints are the right hand and the left hand side. Okay, now before I run this, We'll go in here and take a look. This is the net cash flows and the net cash requirements. And and we set these constraints that these have to be equivalent. Now we also have figures for the cash in and the cash out for each year. Year 1, year 2. So we have cash flows in, cash flows out, up to year 4. And then starting at year 4, we have cash flows in, but nothing out. But we need to know our minimum cash requirements. And here's the capital budget. And the textbook, will pop back over here for a moment, discusses the case, gives us the details about what's going on with this company. The decision variables, the objective function, the left-hand side, how that was constructed. Ditto the right-hand side. And then the solution. They show us setting up solver. And the step-by-step to do it. And they give us a sensitivity report as well. Okay? So I'm going to diminish this down and we'll go back over here. And now we've got the bond prices increased, and now we're ready to run solver. Make sure one more time we got everything set up. We've got the objective functions in B20. The changing cells are A17 to L17. And then we've got the cash requirement, and then we have the constraints, which are those cash requirements, the net cash flows, and we'll solve. And we have a solution. And let's go ahead, and I'm just going to go ahead and I have the answer report. I have the answer report and a sensitivity report where the bond prices increase. So notice I have a sensitivity report too. And let's go back to the original solution for a minute and run it. And I'm going to create an answer report. So we have I have the original solution, and we'll just get these moved around where we need to. Here's the and we've got the original solution. I'm going to move these tabs around a little bit so we've got everybody. So I've got the original, I've got answer report number 1. So I'm going to take the answer report number 1. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move these. And I'm going to put the original solution. Well, it's going to be easier just to do it here. I'm going to take I'm going to find the original solution. And you can manipulate the tabs around to put them in order. But right now I have the original solution. Then I have the first answer report. There we go. And then sensitivity report number 1. Okay, so I have the original solution tab. I have the answer report 1. I have sensitivity report 2. Okay. Then I have the bond price increase. So I'm going to put it right here so that I have the bond price increase, that scenario, answer report number 1. And I see I should have sensitivity report number 2. There it is. So everything's lined out real nice. So I've got sensitivity report number 1. We've talked about that, and you can, of course, look and interpret and see the allowable increases and decreases. So you can see the ones that are most sensitive to change in the variable. Then we've got answer report number 2, where we get the final value, and this is with the bond price increase, okay? And we get 1745 if the bond prices increase. We can go back here and look at the original solution, and it was 1728. So when the bond prices went up, the minimum funds needed increase. So at this case, at this point, we've taken the original solution data and we've adapted them by increasing the prices of the bond by 2.5%. And we can then go and look at the answer report. And then we can look at the sensitivity report when we have sensitivity report number 2 dealing with the bond prices increase. Well, now we can do this. I'm going to go back to the original solution, okay? And I'm going to copy that tab. And I should see a copy of the original solution back over here. And this is called original solution 2, but we're going to rename it bond prices increase. Bond price, yeah. Bond prices decrease, excuse me. Okay, we've done that. In this case, we're going to decrease the bonds by 2.5% in terms of their value. So this is going to equal and times, and I'm going to put in parentheses. No, I'm not going to do that. It's going to be 0.975. Okay, and here it's going to equal 1 times 0.975. Nothing complicated about the math or just the inputs. It's what we're looking at as we discuss this company, as we discuss the operation. And I spoke about that in class on Wednesday about bond pricing and how things look. Now we're ready to run the solver. We've changed those prices. And now we're ready. We decrease them. Let's see what happens. And as you would assume, okay, on the bond price, when the bond prices decrease, the minimum funds needed decreases. Okay. Now I'm going to generate an answer report and a sensitivity report. And that's answer report 3 and sensitivity report 3. And I'll just move these 2 around. The answer report 3 corresponds to bond price decrease. Sensitivity report corresponds to the bond price decrease. Now, let's go back for a moment and go back to the original solution. Now, as I spoke with you in class the other day, I gave you two very simple scenarios. One, all of the bond prices increase 2.5%, or two, all of the bond prices decrease. You could, and if you're out in the real world, you should, if you're anticipating a 2.5% swing, if you think that's what's going to happen, and that 2.5% decrement or increment, i.e. increase or decrease or increase, would be dictated by what you know to be market conditions around bond prices. But in any event, you could look at the bond, and you could create a little scenario, and then use the scenario analysis. And this would be bond. You get bond 1, bond 2, and bond 3. And then you could have you could get the figure it equals, and you could have the bond price for 1 go up 3%, because you already have it for them, all of them increasing. So in this case, this would equal, you could set up that matrix here, equals 1.15, and we're going to do times 1.025. Okay, but then the other prices stay the same. Got me? Now in this case, and you'd want to label this as you could guess, bond price increase. And then you could come down here for a second scenario, in addition to the ones you've already run. And you could you'd start with the second bond. So the first bond's going to stay at 1.15. And then the second bond is going to equal and we'll get that price. And it goes up to 1.025, and this will then we'll have the last one where it's just going to stay static, and you have a bond 2 increase, and then we could do and then this would be equal 1.35 times 1.025. And so you have a bond 3 increase. So you've worked a piece of this permutation where each of the 3 bonds have increased. You could do a similar, then you could come back and do it a similar situation with the bonds decreasing each bond. And that's going to be pretty simple. So we'll just go ahead and do the labels. One, decrease. Okay. A bond 2 decrease. And a bond 3 decrease. I have a bond 1 decrease, bond 2 decrease, and a bond 3 decrease. So we've run through each of the scenarios. That's going to equal 1.15 times the price decreases, so it would be 0.975. Of course, in this scenario, bond 2 stays the same. So does bond 3. Now we're going to increase bond 2. This will be 1.15, and then this will equal 1 times 0.975, and that's going to give us, and then the bond price, the price for bond 3 is going to stay the same. So it will be 1.35. Now, move here for just a second. A bond 1 decrease. So I have, and then I have one last scenario where bond 3 decreases. Putting in the price for bond 1. There's the price for bond 2. And this is going to equal 1.35 times 0.975. And there we are. So you see the bond. So I have this matrix that I've set up of the permutations. And I want to put, and I want to go ahead and put, let's see, my borders. There's orientation, size, my borders. Find that here for a second. Yikes. There's the border. No, there it is. Earth domain. I don't want all borders. And then I have the bond, and then I have the scenarios. Okay. With these data, okay, I have data I can put into the scenario manager and run and name each of these scenarios. Now, because I've got formulas, the scenario manager won't play nice with me. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to copy this. Okay. And then I'm going to scoot over here a little bit. And I'm going to paste the values. Not the whole thing, for a simple reason. When I start to use the scenario manager, okay, I just wanted to paste it. I just want the values. I'm going to go over here for a minute. Oh, there we go. The reason I went through this and took out, when you use the scenario manager, it doesn't allow you to have changed, it doesn't allow you to put equations into cells, it just wants values. So I'm going to show you real quickly how we would do that. I'm going to click on the data, and I'll come over to the what if analysis, okay? And on the scenario manager, I'm going to add a name, and this would be, I could call it bond price increase. Bond 1 increase. And I'll be changing the cells. I'm going to go over and find these cells. Okay. And I'll click this, okay. And I'll put in the new values, which would be 1.178, 1.1, let's see, let me make sure I get this, equals 1.17875. And then F6 would be 1, and G6 would be okay. And we could have it show. Then we could run the solver. I'll come back over here and we'll run solver, and we're going to run that scenario, and we'll see what we get with those changes. I'm going to cancel that, and we'll go back to the original values for those bonds. And so we have the original solution. And we'll just pop back up here. If I'm not mistaken, the first bond was 1.15. So we'll go back in and add that and change that back out to 1.15. This will be 1 and 1. And so you can see what it looks like if we ran that scenario. And just, we're going to do this. I'm going to do the what if analysis. Pardon me, the scenario manager. And I'm going to add, and I'm going to call this original. And I'm going to change cells E6 to G6. And that will be E1, E115, 1, and 135. We'll click OK. And we'll click Show. And there we have our original solution. If we do the bond, just bond 1 increase, I'll click Show. And we'll close. And then we'll run the solver. Okay. Well, I didn't change these values. I should have changed them. Yeah, this should be. Let's go back up to the scenario manager for just a second. But I think what you get my drift here in terms of the original. Okay, and we'll close it off, and we'll run the solver. And we get the 1728. Then we'll come back to the scenario manager and the bond increase. And I'm going to come in and just look at edit to see what we get there. And here we have the increase for the one bond. The other two stay the same. It'll be okay. And we'll show that. And then we can run the solver and see what we get. And you can see when we increase the one bond, it went up $4. Okay. Now I'm going to go back here to the solver. Pardon me. I'm going to go back to the what if analysis. You can see I could build a scenario and I could start to look at the possible outcomes. That's the whole point here. And I'll click show and we're back to the original values. And then I'll run the solver. And we're back to where we were. Okay. Well, that's Hewlitt explained. Now, I spent some time in class the other day speaking about bond pricing and why the prices would go up or not. Walked through some on the decision variables, the left-hand side, the right-hand side, setting that up and getting the solution. And looking at the dialog box, which we did that. So I think that will pretty much help you. Now, where you'll want to do some more exploring is this area here where I went through the scenarios. Really, these are two scenarios up here. The price of all three go up to 2.5%, excuse me. Then the others where all three of the prices go up, they go down. And then you'll notice I had these scenarios where I had the a bond price bond one increases, and the other two are the same. Then I increase bond two, the other two are the same, and then I increase bond three, and then I do the decrement or the decrease for each of those bonds. And I build a little matrix, and I can see what it's going to look like in terms of each of these scenarios. Now, the 2.5% would be an issue that people have talked through or studied as they've recommended how they think bond prices might move and how they think which particular bond there may be movement on. Okay? Well, that's pretty much it. And I'm going to stop the recording now, and I'll say this, and then I'll post it over in Canvas, not Kansas.